What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the episode of Primetime Sports Podcast, hosted by Joe May-Larry. So in this episode, I'm going to talk about BC's big win yesterday. Had a huge win over Clemson in the second round of the ACC tournament. So now they're in the quarterfinals, which will be tonight. A tough matchup, though, against UVA, which I'll preview that at the end. We'll start off with BC's win over Clemson. Big upset win last night. BC's now won 2 games in a row in the tournament, winning yesterday's game 76-55, blowing the Tigers out. And at the end of the day, I said this yesterday, that BC getting into the tournament, then winning that first game and getting some momentum rolling is obviously a huge part of the tournament, because you're playing a team in Clemson yesterday that didn't play in the first round since they had a first round bye, and they're coming into the game probably taking BC a little bit lightly. And they also were already in the tournament anyways. They were going to make March Madness anyways, so they might have taken BC lightly and not cared as much. Today, though, you're playing a UVA team that also had now an extra day off, so 2 byes for Virginia, and they're actually a team that needs to win to get into the big dance. So this could be a tougher game for BC than Clemson was last night, but UVA hasn't played in 5 days. And obviously now BC has momentum rolling with 2 wins in a row, and a lot of things are going their way. In that win last night, BC dominated on the glass, out-rebounding the Tigers 44-27, which was huge to see. And it was also in limited minutes for Quinton Post. Quinton Post didn't play that much yesterday since he had some foul trouble in the first half. They also held Clemson to just 4 for 20 from 3, and I don't think Clemson hit a 3 in the second half. So that was a big difference maker for BC in getting that win. BC also had 16 points off turnovers, which is something that's huge to winning games, is taking advantage of turnovers, and that's what BC did yesterday. Claudio Harris didn't shoot that efficiently from 3, just 5 of 16 from 3, but he did have 27 points, 5 rebounds, and a steal. He also attacked the basket a few times, which they were in big moments. Whenever BC had a tough stretch on offense, maybe a minute or 2 without scoring, he responded with a big drive down the lane, attacking the basket, getting to the free throw line. That's obviously what you need as a shooter, a guy that can obviously shoot the 3, but also get the defense on their toes and not know if he's going to drive or not. And that's what Harris did yesterday. Had a great game, 27 points. So that was obviously big for BC. They just played so calm and comfortably all game, and that was huge in the win. Post wasn't foul trouble in the first half. He only had 11 points and 8 rebounds in yesterday's game. He did have 7 points, though, so that's obviously a plus that he's getting more involved as a playmaker on offense this year. Also added in a block. That was huge to see as well. BC's going to need probably 36 minutes out of him tonight, though, so hopefully he doesn't get into foul trouble. One thing I do worry about tonight is UVA's defense is great, and BC does have stretches where they don't score for 4 or 5 minutes. We didn't see that yesterday, luckily, but they do have stretches just on every other game, if not every game, where they don't score for 4 or 5 minutes. They need to make sure those droughts don't happen tonight against UVA, because UVA's defense is great. Their offense may not be that great, but if they hold BC to shooting, let's say 30, 35% from the floor, BC's not going to win the game. BC needs a good shooting night tonight in order to beat UVA. Yesterday, Jaden Zachary did shoot very well. 22 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists. Also was 4 for 5 from 3. Played very strong all game long. Had 0 turnovers as well. He's done a great job of taking care of the ball for BC. That'll be a big part of tonight's game, is taking care of the ball and limiting turnovers, since Virginia was great at forcing their opponent to turn the ball over. BC needs to take care of the ball tonight. Obviously a big win last night, though, so BC does have momentum rolling. And as we've seen, BC a couple years ago just won a couple games, and then in that third game, the quarterfinals, they made it really tough in Miami and barely lost at the last second. If BC can just find a way to be in this game late and put a lot of pressure on UVA, I think BC could win this game. And we saw them play comfortably last night. BC played very comfortably. And what I loved most about the win was BC's poise all game long. And credit to Earl Grant for keeping these guys locked in. Even when they've had bad stretches during the season, during a game, he always finds a way to keep them motivated. It keeps their heads in the game. That's a big part of winning games, whether it's March Madness or regular season or your conference tournament. A big part of winning games is keeping your composure. And BC had all of their composure yesterday, the entire game. That's going to be a big question mark tonight. Can BC find a way to not turn the ball over, keep their composure against a very good UVA defense? And if they are able to do so, I think BC could win this game. And I really liked Earl Grant's quote in the locker room after the game. He said, "We're not underdogs, we're under God." And that's just another catchy line, just like Gritty Not Pretty. Catches on social media. Everybody buys in. Everybody's really excited for BC's game tonight, and rightfully so. 2 great wins in a row. And they shot the ball very well yesterday, BC, especially at the free throw line. They were 16 of 16 at the free throw line, which is something that's been a problem for BC for years. But they've gotten a lot better at the free throw line in the Earl Grant era. So credit to Earl Grant for getting these guys to play better basketball, offensively, defensively, and obviously at the free throw line as well. And I like Earl Grant a lot. I've always been a big fan of him. This would be the biggest win of his tenure at BC if he can find a way to win tonight. BC is going to need every point tonight to beat a very good defensive UVA team. So now I'm going to preview that game. BC versus UVA. UVA's offense isn't great. They had 3 games in a row in the month of February where they scored in the 40s for 3 straight games. So their offense isn't great, but their defense is very good. That's always been their specialty and bread and butter, and that's just been the way they've won games over the last few years. That's how they won a national championship, is very good defense and then situational basketball and offense, hitting some big shots. That's what they've been able to do, and it's obviously worked for their program. They did beat BC in their one time they matched up this season at Conte Forum a few weeks ago, winning that game 72-68. BC and UVA each scored 45 points in the second half. After both teams really started cold in the first half, they got things going in the second half, but BC couldn't win that game, unfortunately. They were out-rebounded 37-30 in that one. UVA doesn't have much height, though. Their biggest guy in their starting lineup, if I remember right, was like 6'8 or 6'9. So there's not too much height in their starting lineup. So BC needs Quinton Post to not get in foul trouble. That's something that's been a problem for him as of late, is fouls. He has to make sure he doesn't get foul trouble and take advantage of UVA in the paint. Obviously, they're a very good defensive team. If BC starts shooting the three very poorly and they're not getting the three to fall, they're going to have to go to the paint, try to work things down low, try to get some second chance points on some rebounds. BC's going to have to switch things up if shooting the three doesn't work. And they did shoot the three a lot in that game against UVA, and that didn't work. In their loss against UVA, Mason Madsen was 1 for 10 from three. Claudio Harris was 1 for 5 from three. BC needs those two guys to step up tonight and shoot the three better. I think Claudio Harris is BC's X factor. Like we saw last night, had a big game. If he can play confidently and shoot around 60% from three, which I know it's asking a lot. Shooting 60% from three is a lot, but he does take a lot of threes. If he can shoot around 50 or 60% and let's say go 5 or 10 from three or 6 or 10 from three, I think BC wins this game. He is a difference maker on offense. And he isn't just a shooter. He's good at attacking the basket and playing aggressively. Hopefully he finds a way to get himself to the line tonight by driving aggressively down the paint, maybe getting UVA in some foul trouble. That's one thing UVA doesn't do. They don't really have any fouls. So if you could try to get one or two of the guys in foul trouble and mix up their rotation and make them nervous and make them stress, that could be a difference maker for BC. A guy BC has to worry about on UVA is Reese Beekman, who's UVA's best scorer, averaging just about 14 points per game, has 66 steals on the season, more than 2 steals per game. UVA's defense is great, like I've already noted. They average 12.4 steals and blocks per game, which I'm combining steals and blocks, their average for each per game. They average 12.4 of those steals plus blocks per game. And they're only giving up 59 points per game as well to their opponent, which is third best in the country. They're great taking care of the ball as well. 1.83 assists per turnover, which is third best in the country. And they're also ninth best in turnover margin in the NCAA. And I've already noted that they play good defense. They also don't have many fouls per game, just 13.6 fouls per game, which is 8th best in all college basketball. So not only do they play good defense, but they do so while not fouling much. And they're holding teams to 40% shooting from the floor, which is 12th best in the country. So BC is going to be forced to take some tough shots tonight. It's just whether or not those shots can fall. UVA's had some tough stretches. They've lost to Notre Dame this season. They only beat BC by 4 points. They've had some tough stretches this season. It's all about trying to shoot the ball better than BC did the last time they played them. You need Mason Madsen to be better than 1 for 10 from three. If BC can find a way to shoot 7% better from the floor than UVA in tonight's game, I think they win it. And you may say, well, if you shoot better than your opponent, you're probably going to win all the time. That's not always the case, though. UVA did have some games this season where they shot better than their opponent, but still lost the game. At the end of the day, it's not always about having a better field goal percentage. You might just be taking more shots because you have less turnovers, or you're taking more shots because you're getting second chance points. But I do think if BC can find a way to shoot, let's say, 5 to 7% better from the floor than UVA, I think that'll be the difference maker. I think that'll help BC win. In UVA's losses in the ACC, they were allowing their opponent to shoot 45% or better from the floor. So BC, if they want to win tonight, has to stay around, let's say, 45 to 47%, while holding Virginia to, let's say, 41 or 40% shooting from the floor. In my ACC tournament preview, I predicted BC would get to this game and lose. And I don't want to double down on that and be right. Since I am a BC fan, I'm not rooting against them. But at the same time, I don't want to predict them to win tonight and then jinx them. So I'm going to stay away from a prediction here. But I do want to note this. BC is 5-2 in the ACC tournament with Earl Grant. They were 4-10 in the previous 10 years heading in to the Earl Grant era. Before Earl Grant, they were 4-10 in their previous 10 years in the ACC tournament. With Earl Grant now, they're 5-2 in his tenure at BC. I'll say this. Last night when I did my preview of the Clemson game, I felt like this UVA game would be tough since UVA does need to win this game in order to make the tournament. And that's why I worried, because UVA does need this win, so I figured that they're going to play a lot harder than Clemson, who is already probably in March Madness anyways. I was worried about this UVA game yesterday when I was previewing that Clemson game, saying if BC beats Clemson, I think they struggle against UVA. And that still may be the case. They could struggle against a very good UVA defense. But I do feel good about BC tonight. But as I said, I'm not going to make a prediction because I don't want to double down and be right and then have BC lose since I am a fan of them. But at the same time, I don't want to predict a win and jinx them. So I'm going to avoid a prediction here in this game. One game that I'm going to predict, though, is another ACC game, and this one tips off at 2:30. Pittsburgh versus Wake Forest. Pittsburgh needs some wins in the tournament to try to get an at-large bid for March Madness, so they do need this game. But the same goes for Wake Forest. Both of these teams right now are on the outside looking in for the March Madness tournament. So this is a big game. It's going to be a hard-nosed, hard-played basketball game, since this is probably going to be a big difference maker for who gets into the tournament. If you lose this game, you're probably not getting into March Madness. If you win this game, your chances are better, but you still probably need to win at least another game to make sure you get in. At least in Pittsburgh's situation, they need to win at least probably one more game. But if you look at Pittsburgh, I'm a really big fan of this team. They're 8-2 in the last 10 games. Blake Hinson's their best player, 18.8 points per game, shooting 42% from three. But I think their most talented player, which Hinson has the best numbers, so I did say he's the best player, but he has the best numbers points per game-wise, just about 19 points per game. But I think their most talented player, in my opinion, is a guy named Carlton Carrington, who has NBA potential. This kid is an absolute beast, and someone that should get more recognition in the ACC. He's only a freshman, averaging just about 14 points per game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and he went off against BC in that game I called just about a couple weeks ago now, BC-Pittsburgh on Senior Day at Conti Forum. He had a huge game. I believe he hit 7 threes in that one. So here's my prediction. I think Pittsburgh wins this game today over Wake. And as I said in my ACC tournament preview, I think Pittsburgh's going to win the ACC tournament. They need to make a run in the ACC tournament in order to get into the big dance. They need to at least get to the tournament finals here in the ACC. If not win it, they at least have to get to it in order to get to the big dance. And I like their chances. A lot of the time, teams that need to win to get in have a chip on their shoulders that they know they need to win this game in order to try to get in. And I think Pittsburgh's going to play hungry in this one. I really do. So I like Pittsburgh to win this game. And as I said before the tournament began, I like Pittsburgh to win the entire tournament. They're getting hot at the right time. Very well coached team by Jeff Capel and have a lot of talent. Blake Hinson, Carlton Carrington, Jalen Lowe. That's just a couple guys right there I named. They have a lot of depth on that team. So I'm excited to see what they do in the ACC tournament. Hopefully BC can find a way to win tonight. Hopefully Pittsburgh wins as well. They're on two different sides of the bracket, which is good, so I don't really have to worry about them matching up unless they were to get to the finals, which that would be a great matchup. I'd be psyched to see that. If BC makes it to the finals, that would be the biggest moment for BC in the last 15 years. And I know they've won national championships in hockey since Matt Ryan left BC and went to the NFL, which that is very impressive. But nobody expected BC basketball to make the ACC tournament finals if they were to get there this year. And I know that's jumping. Still, they still would have to win tonight's game, and they'd have to beat Duke tomorrow. So it is an uphill battle, but it is much. It's much. Anything can happen at the end of the day, and this is why you play the games, because anybody can win any given day. And like I've said now multiple times already, if BC can find a way to continue this run in the ACC tournament, and let's say win tonight and then win tomorrow and get there to the finals, that would be BC's biggest moment in sports in the last 15 years. Since Matt Ryan left, that would be BC's biggest moment, and I'd love to see it. Anyways, that'll close this episode. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to this. As always, I appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.